The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh, sterile glow across the marble floors of the Denver County Courthouse. It was 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in late September, and the building was already packed with the usual parade of humanity seeking justice, mercy, or simply resolution. The air conditioning hummed loudly, fighting against the Colorado sun that streamed through the tall windows, creating long shadows that stretched across the nervous crowd gathered in the main lobby. Little Emma gripped her mother's hand, her small fingers squeezing with surprising strength for a 3-year-old. Her pink sneakers, the ones with the light-up features she loved so much, felt heavy on her feet today. Everything felt heavy lately, though she didn't have the words to explain why. The world seemed fuzzy around the edges, like looking through her mother's reading glasses. Sophia checked her watch anxiously for the third time in as many minutes. 8:48 a.m. Their case was scheduled for 9:15, and she couldn't afford to be late. More importantly, she couldn't afford to lose. The $175 parking ticket she was here to contest represented groceries for 2 weeks, or the electricity bill, or a portion of the rent that was already 5 days late. Being a single mother working 2 jobs, morning shift at the bakery, evening shift cleaning offices, meant every dollar mattered, every single one. She glanced down at Emma, noticing again how pale her daughter looked. The dark circles under her eyes seemed more pronounced in the harsh courthouse lighting. Sophia's stomach twisted with guilt. Emma had been so tired lately, sleeping more, complaining about being thirsty all the time. Just yesterday, Emma had wet the bed, something she hadn't done in over a year. Sophia had chalked it up to stress. Maybe Emma was picking up on her mother's anxiety about money, about the eviction notice that had arrived last week, about the phone calls from debt collectors that Sophia ignored. "It's just a growth spurt," Sophia's mother had said over the phone last night. "You were the same way at her age, always tired, always hungry, always drinking water." Sophia wanted to believe that. She needed to believe that. Across the expansive marble lobby, standing near the security checkpoint, Officer shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His partner, Rex, a magnificent German shepherd with a glossy black and tan coat, sat at perfect attention beside him. Rex's dark, intelligent eyes scanned the crowd with the focused intensity of a trained professional. At 5 years old, Rex was in his prime. A decorated K-9 officer with an impressive service record that included 47 successful searches, 12 missing persons found, and countless hours of community service. Checked his own watch. 8:49 a.m. They were here for a community safety hearing scheduled for 10:00 a.m., a hearing that dreaded more than any dangerous call he'd ever responded to. City budget cuts. The words made his jaw clench. The K-9 unit was on the chopping block, and today's hearing would likely seal their fate. Rex, along with 3 other dogs in the unit, faced early retirement. The city council claimed they needed to reallocate resources and prioritize essential services. His captain had been blunt: make your case or start looking for a new partner. The thought of Rex being retired, of their partnership ending not because of age or injury but because of a budget spreadsheet, made his chest tight. They'd been through too much together. Rex had saved his life twice, once during a warehouse search where an armed suspect had been hiding, and once when Rex had alerted to a gas leak before had entered a building. How do you put a price on that? Rex's ears suddenly perked forward, his body tensing slightly, followed his partner's gaze across the lobby. A little girl, couldn't be more than 3 or 4 years old, was staring directly at Rex. She had curly brown hair pulled into 2 messy pigtails and wore a purple dress with butterflies on it, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. They had a glazed, almost distant quality that didn't match her young age. Emma couldn't look away from the big dog. Something about him called to her, pulled at something deep in her chest. She'd always loved dogs. Her stuffed German shepherd, which she'd named Buddy, was clutched in her other hand right now. But this was different. This felt important in a way her 3-year-old mind couldn't quite grasp. "Mama," Emma whispered, tugging on Sophia's hand. "Doggy." "I see him," Sophia replied absently, scrolling through her phone trying to review the notes she'd made about her parking ticket defense. "That's a police dog. We can't pet him. He's working." But Emma wasn't listening anymore. The pull was too strong. The world felt like it was tilting slightly, and the only steady thing in her vision was that dog, those kind, watchful eyes. Somewhere in her foggy mind, an instinct she couldn't name told her that the dog could help, that she needed the dog. Without thinking, without planning, Emma's fingers loosened from her mother's grip. Her light-up sneakers began moving across the polished marble floor, each step making a small squeaking sound that echoed in the cavernous lobby. She walked slowly, steadily, directly toward Officer and Rex. "Emma," Sophia's voice was sharp with sudden panic. She looked up from her phone to see her daughter halfway across the lobby, walking toward a massive police dog. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Emma, stop." But Emma kept walking. Several people in the lobby noticed now. A lawyer paused mid-conversation. A security guard's hand moved toward his radio. An elderly woman gasped softly. The little girl in the purple butterfly dress was approaching a working K-9 unit, and everyone who knew anything about police dogs knew that was dangerous. Saw her coming and raised his hand in the universal signal for Rex to stay calm and hold position. "Ma'am," he called to Sophia, who was now rushing forward, her phone forgotten. "It's okay, just move slowly." But Rex's reaction was unlike anything he'd seen in their 5 years together. The dog's entire body had gone rigid, his ears forward, his nose working the air. He wasn't showing any signs of aggression, no growling, no bared teeth, but something was definitely wrong. Rex was alerting to something, his training kicking in even though this made no sense. Emma stopped directly in front of Rex, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. The lobby had gone eerily quiet, dozens of eyes watching this surreal moment unfold. The little girl reached out one small, trembling hand toward the German shepherd's face. And then, in a voice that seemed to carry across the entire courthouse despite being barely above a whisper, Emma said 2 words that would change everything. "Help me." Time seemed to stop in the Denver County Courthouse lobby. Emma's whispered words "help me" hung in the air like smoke, visible to everyone yet impossible to grasp. For a moment, the entire building seemed to hold its breath. The constant buzz of conversation died. The clicking of heels on marble ceased. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop their incessant humming. Officers' training told him to maintain control of the situation, to keep Rex in position, to calmly assess the threat level. But there was no threat here, just a tiny girl in a butterfly dress with her hand extended toward his partner. What froze to his core was Rex's reaction. In 5 years of partnership, through drug busts and search and rescue operations, through crowd control at protests and tracking suspects through the mountains, had learned to read Rex like a book. Every twitch of an ear, every shift in posture, every subtle change in breathing told him something. Right now, Rex was telling him something was catastrophically wrong. Rex's ears shot forward so fast it was almost comical. His entire body went rigid, muscles tensing beneath his glossy coat. Then came the whining, a high-pitched, urgent sound that had only heard during active search operations when Rex had located a missing person or detected narcotics. But this was different. This was desperate. The German shepherd broke his sitting position, rising to all fours, his nose working frantically as he sniffed the air around Emma. His training warred with his instincts, stay in position versus alert to danger. Instinct 1. Rex began pawing at Emma's chest, gentle but insistent, the same motion he used when he detected something critical in the field. "Rex, heel," commanded, his voice sharp with confusion and concern. But Rex didn't heel. He didn't even acknowledge the command. That alone sent alarm bells ringing in his head. Rex never ignored a direct command. Sophia reached her daughter, grabbing Emma by the shoulders and pulling her back from the dog. "I'm so sorry, officer," she gasped, her voice shaking with fear and embarrassment. "She just got away from me. Emma, what were you thinking?" Her hands trembled as she held her daughter close, scanning for any sign of injury, any scratches or bites. But Emma wasn't hurt. She wasn't crying. She simply stood there, swaying slightly, her eyes still locked on Rex with that same distant, glazed expression. "The doggy knows," she said softly, her words slightly slurred. "He knows I don't feel good." "Baby, you're fine," Sophia insisted, though her voice cracked with uncertainty. "You're just tired. We'll go home right after Mama's appointment, okay?" Stepped forward, his hand raised in a calming gesture. "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm, but I need to ask you some questions. How long has your daughter been lethargic like this?" Sophia's eyes widened. "Lethargic, she's not, she's just—" But the words died in her throat as she really looked at Emma. The paleness, the dark circles, the way her daughter was leaning against her leg as if standing was too much effort. "Maybe a week, 10 days, I thought it was just a growth spurt." By now a crowd had gathered. A dozen courthouse employees and visitors formed a loose circle around the scene, everyone speaking in hushed, urgent whispers. A bailiff approached, hand on his radio. "Everything okay here, officer?" His mind was racing. Rex's behavior was unmistakable. This was an alert. But an alert to what? The dog wasn't trained in medical detection. He'd had some cross-exposure during joint training exercises with diabetic alert dogs, but nothing formal. Yet here he was, performing a textbook medical alert on a child he'd never met before. "Has she been drinking a lot of water?" asked Sophia, his voice taking on an urgent edge. "More than usual. Has she been going to the bathroom frequently?" Sophia's face went pale. "Yes," she whispered. "I've been filling her sippy cup 6-7 times a day, and she had an accident last night, wet the bed. She hasn't done that in over a year." Her voice broke. "What's wrong with my baby?" Pulled out his radio, his years of training kicking into overdrive. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I need medical assistance at the courthouse main lobby immediately. Possible medical emergency, juvenile female, approximately 3 years old." He turned back to Sophia. "Ma'am, I think Rex is detecting something serious. We need to get her checked out right now." "Detecting? What do you mean detecting?" Sophia's voice rose in pitch, panic creeping in. "She's fine, she's just tired." But Emma was no longer standing. Her legs buckled and Sophia caught her just before she hit the marble floor. "Emma, Emma, baby, stay with me." The little girl's eyes fluttered, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. "Everybody back," commanded, his voice booming with authority. The crowd immediately stepped back, giving them space. Rex moved with him, staying close to Emma, his whining growing more frantic. A security guard rushed over with a first aid kit. "Paramedics are 3 minutes out," he reported. Knelt beside Emma, checking her pulse. It was racing, too fast for a child at rest. Her skin felt dry and hot to the touch despite the air-conditioned building. Rex pushed his nose against Emma's hand, then looked up with eyes that seemed to say, "Do something. Fix this." "What's her name?" asked Sophia, trying to keep her focused and calm. "Emma, Emma, please, tell me what's happening." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she cradled her daughter. "I think," paused, not wanting to diagnose but knowing time was critical. "I think Rex is detecting ketones. It's a chemical the body produces. Dogs can smell it on the breath. It's associated with diabetes." The word hit Sophia like a physical blow. Diabetes, but she's 3, she's a baby. "Type 1 diabetes can develop at any age," an older woman spoke up from the crowd. She pushed through, a retired nurse named who'd been waiting for her own court date. "If that's what this is, and the dog is right, this little girl is in serious danger. Diabetic can turn deadly fast in children." The automatic doors burst open, and 2 paramedics rushed in with their equipment bags and a portable stretcher. They moved with practiced efficiency, immediately assessing Emma's condition while Sophia answered their rapid-fire questions through her tears. Altered mental state, tachycardia, suspected DKA, the lead paramedic called to his partner. We need to get her to Denver General now. As they prepared to move Emma to the stretcher, Rex stayed close, his alert never wavering, had to physically hold his partner back as the paramedics worked. "Good boy," he whispered to Rex. "You did good, you found her." The paramedics lifted Emma onto the stretcher, securing straps around her small body. Sophia climbed in beside her daughter, her hands shaking as she stroked Emma's hair. As they wheeled toward the exit, Emma's eyes opened slightly. She looked back at Rex and managed the smallest smile. "Thank you, doggy," she whispered. Then they were gone, disappearing through the courthouse doors into the waiting ambulance. The crowd stood in stunned silence, slowly dispersing as the reality of what they'd witnessed settled in. Remained standing in the middle of the lobby, Rex pressed against his leg and wondered if a chance encounter and 2 whispered words had just saved a little girl's life. His radio crackled. "Unit 47, what's your status? Are you still available for the 10 a.m. hearing?" Looked down at Rex, who was still staring at the doors where Emma had disappeared. "Negative, dispatch," he said quietly. "We're going to the hospital. I need to know how this ends." The ambulance screamed through downtown Denver, its siren wailing a path through the mid-morning traffic. Inside, Sophia sat frozen, her hand clutching Emma's small fingers as paramedic Jake worked with controlled urgency. His partner, Rachel, no relation to Officer, drove with practiced precision, navigating the busy streets toward Denver General Hospital. "Talk to me, Jake," Rachel called from the driver's seat, taking a sharp turn that made the ambulance sway. "Blood sugar reading is 542, Jake reported, his voice grim as he stared at the glucose meter. "Respirations are rapid and shallow, classic breathing pattern. I'm smelling fruity ketones on her breath." He looked up at Sophia, his expression professionally neutral but his eyes concerned. "Ma'am, when was the last time Emma ate or drank anything?" Sophia's mind raced, trying to remember through the fog of panic. She had some orange juice this morning. Maybe an hour ago, she wanted 2 glasses. She's been so thirsty lately. Her voice broke. "What does 542 mean? Is that bad?" Jake inserted an IV line into Emma's tiny arm with remarkable gentleness. Emma whimpered but didn't fully wake. "Normal blood sugar for a child should be between 70 and 100. Your daughter's level is dangerously high. We're dealing with diabetic DKA. Her body is breaking down fat for energy because it can't use glucose properly, and that's creating dangerous acids in her blood." The words felt like a foreign language. Diabetic, DKA, acids. Sophia had heard of diabetes. Her grandmother had type 2, but she'd always thought that was an old person's disease. Something that happened after decades of poor diet. Not something that could attack a 3-year-old who loved and preferred water to soda. "But how?" Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How did this happen? I'm her mother. How did I not know?" Jake's expression softened as he hung a bag of saline. "Type 1 diabetes isn't caused by anything you did or didn't do. It's an autoimmune condition. And honestly, you're lucky. Most parents don't catch it until their child is already unconscious or in a coma. That police dog," he shook his head in amazement. "I've been a paramedic for 12 years and I've never seen anything like that." "ETA 2 minutes," Rachel called from the front. Meanwhile, in his patrol car following the ambulance, Officer gripped the steering wheel tightly. Rex sat in his usual spot in the specially designed K9 compartment behind the driver's seat, but he wasn't settling like he normally did. The dog was whining, packing in the confined space, clearly agitated. "I know," Buddy said, glancing in the mirror. "I know you're worried about her. Me too." His radio crackled. "Unit 47, this is Sergeant Williams. What's your status? You missed the community hearing." Stomach dropped. The hearing, the budget cuts. In the chaos of the last 20 minutes, he'd completely forgotten. "Sergeant, I'm en route to Denver General. That juvenile medical emergency, it's serious. DKA. Rex alerted to it before any human noticed." There was a long pause. "Diabetic, you're telling me Rex detected that?" "Yes, sir. He's never had formal medical detection training, but the paramedics confirmed it. If we hadn't gotten her to the hospital." Didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "Understood. I'll inform the city council." But William's voice held a note of warning. "They're not happy. Councilwoman specifically asked where you were. The vote's been postponed until next Tuesday." "Copy that." Ended the transmission, his jaw clenched. Next Tuesday. One more week before they decided Rex's fate. One more week to prove that the K9 unit was worth the cost. And ironically, Rex might have just provided the most compelling argument possible if the little girl survived. The ambulance pulled into the emergency bay at Denver General Hospital and parked nearby, leaving Rex in the climate-controlled vehicle with the windows cracked. "Stay," he commanded. "I'll be right back." Inside the ER, organized chaos erupted. Emma was rushed into a trauma bay where Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the attending pediatric emergency physician, immediately took charge. She was a 15-year veteran who'd seen more than her share of DKA cases, but it never got easier, especially with patients this young. "I need a full metabolic panel, blood gas, CBC, and urinalysis stat," Dr. Mitchell ordered, her hands already examining Emma. "Start an insulin drip at 0.1 units per kilogram per hour. And someone call pediatric ICU. We're going to need a bed." Sophia stood against the wall, feeling helpless as a swarm of medical professionals surrounded her daughter. A nurse guided her to a chair. "Let them work," the nurse said gently. "They know what they're doing." "Is she going to die?" Sophia asked, the question she'd been too terrified to voice finally escaping. The nurse hesitated, then chose honesty. "DKA is very serious, especially in young children, but you got her here early. That police officer told us what happened about the dog. Most kids don't get here until they're much worse off. Your daughter has a fighting chance." A fighting chance. The words were both hopeful and terrifying. Appeared in the doorway of the waiting area, still in uniform, his presence commanding even in this civilian space. Sophia looked up, recognizing him immediately. "Officer," she breathed. He moved toward her, pulling up a chair beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sophia grabbed his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing your dog. Thank you for calling the ambulance. Thank you for—" Her voice broke completely. "Rex deserves the credit," said quietly. "I've never seen him do anything like that before. He's had some exposure to medical detection through joint training, but nothing formal. He just knew." "How long have you been partners?" Sophia asked, desperate for any conversation that would distract her from the terrible scenarios playing in her mind. 5 years. He's the best partner I've ever had, human or otherwise." Paused. "There's a city council hearing next week. They're deciding whether to cut funding for the K9 unit. Rex might be forced into early retirement." Sophia's eyes widened. "What? But he just saved my daughter's life." "Budget cuts. The city says we're too expensive." There was bitterness in his voice that he couldn't quite hide. Before Sophia could respond, Dr. Mitchell emerged from the trauma bay, pulling off her gloves. Her expression was serious but not devastated. Sophia clung to that distinction like a lifeline. "Mrs." Dr. Mitchell began, sitting down across from her. "Emma is in critical condition, but she's stable for now. Her blood glucose was 542, and her blood indicates severe acidosis. We're administering insulin and fluids to bring her levels down gradually. We have to be careful not to drop them too fast, or we risk other complications." "But she'll be okay." Sophia's voice was barely audible. Dr. Mitchell chose her words carefully. "The next 24 to 48 hours are critical. DKA can cause brain swelling, especially in children. We're monitoring her closely. But I have to tell you, another hour or two without treatment and we'd be having a very different conversation. Whoever detected this early saved her life." Sophia turned to, tears flowing freely now. "Rex saved her life." Dr. Mitchell looked confused. "Rex?" "My K-9 partner," explained. "He alerted to her condition in the courthouse lobby. He's the reason we called for medical help." The doctor's eyebrows rose. "A police dog detected DKA? That's extraordinary. I've heard of diabetic alert dogs, but they're specially trained and usually work with known diabetics, not random detection in strangers." "Can I see her?" Sophia asked. "Soon. We're getting her settled in the pediatric ICU. You'll be able to stay with her there." Dr. Mitchell stood. "Your daughter is a fighter, Mrs., and she's very lucky." As the doctor walked away, his radio buzzed again, but before he could answer, Sophia stopped him. "That hearing next week," she said, her voice suddenly fierce through the tears. "I'm going to be there, and I'm bringing Emma if she's well enough. They need to hear what Rex did. They need to know what he's worth." Met her eyes and saw the steel beneath the fear. "Thank you," he said simply. "No," Sophia replied firmly. "Thank you and thank Rex. Now please go check on him. Tell him Emma is going to fight. Tell him she's going to make it. Dogs understand more than we think." Nodded and headed back to his patrol car, where Rex was still packing anxiously. When opened the door, Rex immediately tried to push past him, looking for the little girl. "She's fighting, boy," said softly, scratching behind Rex's ears. "Because of you, she's fighting." Rex whined once, then finally settled, resting his head on his lap. And for the first time in the chaos of the morning, both officer and dog breathed a little easier. 6 days later, Emma opened her eyes in the pediatric ICU at Denver General Hospital. The first thing she saw was her mother's face, exhausted but radiant with relief. The second thing she saw, pressed against the window of her room, was a familiar black and tan snout. "Rex!" Emma's voice was hoarse from the breathing tube that had been removed just hours earlier, but her face lit up with pure joy. Sophia turned to see Officer standing in the hallway, Rex sitting obediently at his side, tail wagging so hard his entire back end swayed. Hospital policy strictly prohibited animals except for certified service dogs, but Dr. Mitchell had personally made an exception. "That dog saved her life," she told the hospital administrator. "The least we can do is let her say thank you." Had visited every day, usually during his lunch break, always with Rex. He'd stand at the window, and Rex would press his nose to the glass, watching Emma with those intelligent, concerned eyes. It had become a ritual that the entire pediatric floor looked forward to. Nurses would time their rounds to catch a glimpse of the heroic police dog, and other young patients would wheel their IV poles over just to see him. But today was different. Today, Emma was awake and alert, her blood sugar levels finally stabilized. Today, she could actually meet her hero. Dr. Mitchell personally escorted and Rex into the room, breaking protocol with a smile. 5 minutes, she said, and he stays calm or I'll have both your badges. Rex moved forward slowly, carefully, as if he understood the fragility of the small human in the hospital bed. Emma reached out her hand, the one without the IV line, and Rex gently pressed his nose into her palm. His tail wagged gently, and a soft whine of relief escaped his throat. "You're a good doggy," Emma whispered, her fingers tangling in his fur. "You knew I was sick. You helped me." Sophia watched through tears she'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. Over the past 6 days, she'd learned more about type 1 diabetes than she'd ever imagined. She'd learned about insulin pumps and carb counting, about blood sugar monitoring, and the signs of both hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. She'd learned that her daughter would face this challenge every single day for the rest of her life. But she'd also learned how close she'd come to losing Emma entirely. Dr. Mitchell had been blunt. Another hour, maybe 2, and Emma would have slipped into a coma. Decay-related brain swelling in children Emma's age has a mortality rate of 25%. Your daughter is alive because a police dog detected chemical changes in her breath that no human would have noticed. 25%, 1 in 4. The numbers haunted Sophia's dreams. "Officer," Sophia said softly, pulling her attention from Emma and Rex, "I can never repay what you and Rex did for us." Shook his head. "Rex did it, I just listened to him. I've been his partner long enough to know when he's alerting to something serious." He paused, watching Rex and Emma together. "Though I have to admit, I've never seen him do anything quite like this. He's had some cross-training exposure with medical detection dogs, but nothing formal. This was pure instinct." "Instinct and heart," Sophia corrected. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "I know the budget hearing is this Tuesday. I wrote a letter to the city council, and I made some phone calls." Raised an eyebrow. "Phone calls?" Sophia's expression turned determined, the same fierce look she'd had in the ER when she'd promised to fight for Rex. "To the news. Channel 7 is sending a reporter tomorrow. I told them the whole story, how Rex detected Emma's diabetes, how he saved her life, how the city wants to cut funding for the K-9 unit." She met's eyes. "I also called the Denver Post, Rocky Mountain News, and 3 radio stations. They're all interested." Felt something swell in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just gratitude that this woman he barely knew was willing to fight for his partner. "Mrs., you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Sophia interrupted firmly. "That hearing is in 3 days. Rex deserves the world to know what he did. And those city council members need to understand they're not just cutting a line item in a budget, they're potentially costing lives." The next morning, Jessica Martinez from Channel 7 News arrived at Denver General with her cameraman, Todd. Jessica was a young, investigative reporter hungry for stories that mattered, and when Sophia had called the station tip line, Jessica had nearly jumped through the phone with excitement. She set up the interview in Emma's hospital room, with Sophia's permission and Dr. Mitchell's supervision. Emma, wearing her hospital gown with a bright purple cardigan Sophia had brought from home, sat up in bed with Buddy, her stuffed German shepherd, clutched in her arms. An insulin pump was now attached to her small body, a constant companion she was still learning to understand. "Can you tell me what happened, Emma?" Jessica asked gently, kneeling beside the bed so she was at eye level with the little girl. Emma looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. "I didn't feel good," Emma said in her small, serious voice. "Everything was fuzzy, but then I saw Rex and I knew he could help, so I asked him." "What did you say to him?" "Help me," Emma replied simply, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. The interview lasted 20 minutes. Sophia explained the timeline, Emma's symptoms that she dismissed as a growth spurt, the courthouse encounter, Rex's alert, the ambulance ride, the terrifying diagnosis. Jessica filmed B-roll of Emma playing with a toy doctor's kit, of the insulin pump, of Sophia demonstrating how to check blood sugar levels. But the most powerful footage came when Officer arrived for his daily visit with Rex. Jessica captured the moment Emma's face lit up, the way Rex moved so carefully toward her, the gentle interaction between the massive police dog and the tiny girl he'd saved. "This is Rex," Emma told the camera, her small hand buried in his fur. "He's my hero." Jessica knew she had her story. The piece aired that night during the 6 p.m. news. Jessica had titled it "Guardian Angel. Police Dog's Miracle Detection Saves Toddler's Life." The segment was 4 minutes long, an eternity in television news, and it was powerful. The footage of Emma saying, "He's my hero," while hugging Rex played over and over in the promotional clips. By 7 p.m., the story had been shared 10,000 times on social media. By 9 p.m., it had gone viral 5,000 shares, then 100,000, then 500,000. National news outlets picked it up. Good Morning America called. The Today Show wanted an interview. CNN ran a segment about police K-9 capabilities most people didn't know existed. Sophia's phone rang constantly. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years, distant relatives, complete strangers wanting to know how Emma was doing. But the calls that mattered most came from other parents. A mother in Boulder whose son had been recently diagnosed with type 1 diabetes after she recognized the symptoms from Emma's story. A father in Colorado Springs who took his lethargic daughter to the ER and caught her DKA before it became critical. A grandmother in Fort Collins who insisted her grandson be tested, despite doctors saying he was probably just tired from school. Emma's story was saving other children. On Monday morning, the day before the city council hearing, the Denver Post ran a front-page story. Budget cuts versus life-saving K-9s. City council to decide fate of hero police dog. The article featured a large photo of Rex and Emma together, her small hand on his head, both looking directly at the camera. The comment section exploded with over 3,000 responses in the first hour. The overwhelming majority were outraged at the proposed budget cuts. Several prominent Denver pledged donations to keep the K-9 unit funded. A GoFundMe campaign started by someone Sophia had never met raised $15,000 in 24 hours. That evening, Sophia received a call from Sergeant Williams. "Mrs.," he said, his voice careful, "I wanted to give you a heads up. The council chambers only hold 200 people and we're expecting over 500 to show up tomorrow. The city is setting up an overflow room with a video feed." And, he paused, "Councilwoman, the one leading the budget cut proposal, she's requested a private meeting with you before the hearing." Sophia's grip tightened on her phone. "Why?" "I don't know, but I thought you should know what you're walking into." After hanging up, Sophia looked at Emma, who was carefully giving her stuffed dog buddy a pretend insulin injection with a toy medical kit. Her daughter, her brave, resilient, miraculous daughter, had become the face of something much bigger than either of them had anticipated. "Mama," Emma asked, looking up, "can Rex come to the courthouse with us tomorrow?" Sophia smiled through the tears that seemed to come so easily these days. "Yes, baby, Rex will definitely be there." She pulled out her laptop and began revising the speech she'd prepared for the hearing. It needed to be perfect, not just for Rex and Officer, not just for her daughter, but for every life the K-9 unit might save in the future. By midnight, Sophia had written and rewritten her testimony 7 times. Finally satisfied, she closed her laptop and whispered a prayer into the darkness. "Please let them listen. Please let Emma's story mean something." Tomorrow, the entire city would be watching. Tomorrow, a 3-year-old girl and a police dog would prove that some things are worth more than money. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tuesday morning arrived with an unseasonably warm October sun beating down on the Denver City Council building. By 8 a.m., a full 2 hours before the hearing was scheduled to begin, the line to enter wrapped around the block. People held signs. "Save our K-9 heroes. Rex saved Emma. Dogs save lives, not budgets." Local news vans lined the street. Their satellite dishes pointed skyward, ready to broadcast what had become the most anticipated city council meeting in recent Denver history. Inside a small conference room on the 3rd floor, Sophia sat across from Councilwoman, the woman who had authored the budget cut proposal. Sophia's hands were folded tightly in her lap, her knuckles white with tension. She'd left Emma with her mother downstairs, not wanting her daughter to witness whatever this confrontation might bring. Councilwoman was in her late 50s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. She had the reputation of being a fiscal hawk, someone who looked at spreadsheets instead of sob stories. Sophia had researched her extensively over the past few days and knew this woman wouldn't be swayed by emotion alone. "Mrs. began, her voice carefully neutral, "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "I didn't think I had much choice," Sophia replied, keeping her voice steady despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. Lips pressed into a thin line. "You always have a choice. I requested this meeting because I wanted to speak with you privately, away from the cameras and the crowds." She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "I've received over 4,000 emails in the past 3 days. My office phone hasn't stopped ringing. I've been called heartless, cruel, a monster who wants to kill children." Sophia said nothing, waiting. "I have 2 children of my own," continued, and for the first time a crack appeared in her professional facade. "Grown now, but I remember when they were young. I remember every fever, every scraped knee, every moment of terror when I thought something might be seriously wrong." She looked directly at Sophia. "I watched your interview. I saw the footage of your daughter with that dog, and She stopped, seemingly unable to continue. "Then why?" Sophia asked, her voice breaking. "Why are you trying to take away the K-9 unit? Why are you trying to force Rex into retirement when he just proved how valuable these dogs are?" Pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. Inside were budget documents, spreadsheets, projections. "Because the city is broke, Mrs. We're $8.7 million in deficit. We've already cut after-school programs, reduced library hours, and laid off 23 city employees. The K-9 unit costs $200,000 annually. That's 4 teachers' salaries, or a reading program that serves 300 children, or repairs to 3 playground facilities in low-income neighborhoods. So you'd rather save money than save lives?" Sophia's voice rose despite her attempt to stay calm. "I'd rather make impossible choices that keep this city functioning," shot back, her own composure cracking. "Do you know how many children in Denver go to bed hungry every night? How many families are one emergency away from homelessness? I have to weigh every dollar, every decision, every program against human suffering." She stood, packing to the window. "Your daughter's story is compelling, it's miraculous even, but I can't make policy decisions based on one miracle. I have to think about the hundreds, the thousands of other children who need help." Sophia stood as well, her hands shaking. "Then think about the 3 other children who were diagnosed with diabetes early because of Emma's story. Think about the 12 missing persons Rex and the other K-9s have found over the past year. Think about the drug busts, the search and rescue operations, the school visits that teach children about safety." Her voice grew stronger. "You want to talk about numbers? Let's talk numbers. How much does it cost the city when a child goes into a diabetic coma? Hospital bills, ambulance services, long-term care. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rex prevented that. Not once, but potentially multiple times now that awareness has spread." Turned from the window, and Sophia was shocked to see tears in the older woman's eyes. "You're right," whispered. "God help me, you're right. But if I don't cut something, they'll cut something worse. I chose the K-9 unit because it seemed like the least harmful option. Was I wrong?" It wasn't really a question. "Yes," Sophia said firmly. "You were wrong, but you can make it right today in that hearing." Wiped her eyes, her professional mask sliding back into place. "The other council members are waiting to see which way I'll vote. If I change my position, the cuts fail. But then we have to find $200,000 somewhere else." She looked at Sophia with something like desperation. "Where? Where do I take it from? What program do I destroy to save yours?" Sophia took a deep breath, remembering something she'd read during her late-night research. The city's contingency fund, the emergency reserve that's sitting at $1.2 million right now. You could allocate $200,000 from that for 1 year and use that time to launch a fundraising campaign. The GoFundMe someone started has already raised over $40,000. Local businesses have pledged support. Give people a chance to invest in the K-9 program directly." Stared at her. "You did your homework." "My daughter almost died because I didn't pay attention to the symptoms. I don't make that mistake twice." Sophia picked up her bag. "That hearing starts in 90 minutes. You have a choice to make, Councilwoman. I hope you make the right one." At 9:45 a.m., the council chambers opened to the public. The room, designed to hold 200 people, was packed with over 250 squeezed into every available space. The overflow room down the hall was at capacity, with another 150 people watching via video feed. Outside, at least 200 more held vigil, unable to get inside. Officer sat in the front row, Rex at his feet. The dog was in full uniform, his official K9 vest with the Denver Police Department insignia, and he sat at perfect attention, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. Other K9 officers sat nearby with their partners, Officer Sarah with her Belgian Ranger, Officer David Torres with his Bloodhound, Scout, Officer Jennifer with her German Shepherd, Atlas. All 4 dogs faced potential retirement if the vote went through. Sophia entered with Emma, and the room erupted in applause. Emma wore a special dress for the occasion, purple with butterflies, the same one she'd worn the day Rex saved her life. Around her neck was a small medical alert necklace that read Type 1 diabetes, a constant reminder of that day at the courthouse. Emma also wore a badge, a junior honorary police officer badge that the department had given her, though it held no official status. As they took their seats, Emma immediately looked for Rex. When she spotted him, her face lit up. "Rex," she called out, waving. The dog's tail thumped against the floor, and a ripple of laughter moved through the tense crowd. The 7 city council members filed in, taking their seats at the raised desk at the front of the room. Councilwoman entered last, her face unreadable. She didn't look at Sophia or Emma, keeping her eyes fixed straight ahead. Mayor Thomas Henderson, presiding over the hearing, called the room to order. "Ladies and we're here today to vote on Proposal 47B regarding the reallocation of funds currently designated to the Denver Police Department K9 unit. This has become, as you all know, a matter of significant public interest." His eyes swept the packed room. "We'll hear testimony from both sides, then proceed to a vote. I expect order and respect throughout these proceedings." The first to testify was Captain Richard, no relation to the councilwoman head of the K9 unit. He presented statistics, success rates, cost-benefit analyses, community impact reports. His presentation was professional, thorough, and ultimately cold, numbers on a screen. Then Officer Sarah spoke about Ranger's work finding a missing Alzheimer's patient last winter. Officer Torres described how Scout had tracked a kidnapped child through 3 counties. Each story was powerful, but Sophia could see that the council members, particularly Councilwoman, had heard versions of these arguments before. Finally, Mayor Henderson called Sophia. Sophia stood, her legs shaking, and walked to the podium. Emma tried to follow, but Sophia's mother held her back. "Mama will be right back," Sophia whispered. At the podium, Sophia looked out at the sea of faces, some sympathetic, some curious, some openly hostile to the budget cuts. She saw journalists with cameras ready, city employees with clipboards, and ordinary Denver citizens who'd taken time off work to be here. She looked down at her prepared speech, the one she'd revised 7 times. Then she folded it up and put it away. "My name is Sophia," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. 10 days ago, I was here to fight a parking ticket. I was worried about money, about rent, about feeding my daughter. I thought those were the biggest problems in my life." She paused. "I was wrong." She told them about Emma's symptoms, about her own ignorance, about the moment in this very building when Rex had detected something she'd missed. She told them about the ambulance ride, about the doctor's words. Another hour or 2, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Emma is alive because of a police dog who wasn't even formally trained to detect diabetes. Rex acted on instinct, on cross-training exposure, on whatever mysterious sense dogs have that we humans lack. Her voice grew stronger. Councilwoman talked about impossible choices, about weighing dollars against human suffering. I understand that. I'm a single mother working 2 jobs. I know about impossible choices. She looked directly at, but here's what I learned in that hospital room, watching my daughter fight for her life. Some things aren't about money. Some things are about what we value as a community, as a society, as human beings who claim to care about protecting the most vulnerable among us. Her voice broke, and she didn't try to hide it. How do you put a price on your child's life? How do you create a spreadsheet that measures a mother's gratitude? How do you cost analyze a miracle? The room was absolutely silent. I'm not here to tell you your jobs are easy. I'm here to tell you that cutting the K-9 unit is wrong. It's short-sighted, it's dangerous, and it sends a message that efficiency matters more than effectiveness, that budgets matter more than lives. She gripped the podium. Don't make that choice, please. Find another way. Sophia returned to her seat, her legs barely supporting her. Emma immediately climbed into her lap, and Sophia held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her body. Alive, healthy, saved. Mayor Henderson cleared his throat. Thank you, Mrs. Council. Do you have questions? Councilwoman raised her hand and Sophia's heart sank. Here it came. The rebuttal, the defense of fiscal responsibility, the inevitable vote to cut the program. Stood, and every camera in the room swiveled to face her. I have a statement, said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. And then I'd like to make a motion. Councilwoman stood at her seat, her hands gripping the desk in front of her so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The packed council chamber held its collective breath, 250 people frozen in anticipation. Even the news cameras seemed to stop their quiet whirring. Outside, on the steps of the building, the crowd pressed closer to the doors, straining to hear through the walls. I have spent 3 weeks defending Proposal 47B, began, her voice measured but carrying an undercurrent of emotion that hadn't been there before. I have argued that fiscal responsibility requires difficult choices. I have presented spreadsheets, cost analyses, and budget projections. I have told myself that logic must prevail over emotion, that sentiment cannot guide policy. Sophia's heart sank. This was it, the justification before the vote, the rationale that would send Rex into retirement and dismantle a unit that saved lives. She pulled Emma closer, feeling her daughter's small body nestled against her chest. But then did something unexpected. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. The words fell into the silent chamber like stones into still water, creating ripples of shocked whispers that silenced with a raised hand. Not about the budget crisis, that's real. Not about the difficult choices we face, those are real too. But I was wrong about what we're choosing between. She looked directly at Sophia and Emma. Mrs. asked me how you put a price on a child's life. The answer is, you don't. You can't. And when I tried to, when I reduced this magnificent K-9 program to a line item worth $200,000, I lost sight of what this city council is supposed to represent. Officer sat motionless, barely breathing. Rex sensed the tension and pressed closer against his leg. Picked up a piece of paper, the budget proposal she herself had written. Then, slowly and deliberately, she tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed in the silent room like thunder. I move to withdraw Proposal 47B in its entirety, she said firmly. Furthermore, I move that we allocate $200,000 from the city's Emergency Contingency Fund to maintain full funding for the K-9 unit for the next fiscal year, during which time we will work with the community to establish a sustainable funding model through private donations and partnerships. The chamber erupted. People jumped to their feet, applauding, crying, shouting with joy. Councilman Robert, who had sat stone-faced throughout the hearing, openly wiped tears from his eyes. Councilwoman Lisa was already nodding enthusiastically. Mayor Henderson banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order, but he was smiling. Order, order, please, Henderson called out, though his voice carried more amusement than authority. We need to hear from the other council members. But before anyone else could speak, a small voice cut through the celebration. Can I say something? Every head turned. Emma had slipped from her mother's lap and was walking toward the front of the chamber, her light-up sneakers flashing with each step. Sophia started to rise to call her back, but Officer gently touched her arm and shook his head. Let her go, he whispered. Emma reached the center aisle and stopped. She was so small that she barely reached the top of the gallery railing. Mayor Henderson leaned forward in his chair. "Young lady, what's your name?" "Emma," she said clearly, though her voice was still the high, sweet voice of a 3-year-old. "I'm the girl Rex saved." Henderson glanced at his fellow council members, then made a decision that would be replayed on news channels across the country. "Would you like to come up here and talk to us, Emma?" A bailiff helped Emma climb the steps to the raised platform where the council members sat. Councilwoman came around from her seat and knelt down beside Emma, bringing herself to the little girl's eye level. The gesture was captured by a dozen cameras. "What do you want to tell us, sweetheart?" asked gently. Emma looked out at the crowded room, at all the adult faces watching her, at the cameras, at her mother who was crying again. Then she looked at Rex, sitting so still and proper beside Officer, and her small face became very serious. "Rex is my best friend," Emma began, her childish voice somehow carrying through the silent chamber. "I was really, really sick, but I didn't know. My mama didn't know. Nobody knew except Rex." She reached out and took his hand with complete trust. "He smelled something bad inside me, something that was making me sick, and he told Officer I needed help." She paused, gathering her thoughts the way young children do when they're trying to say something important. "Now I have to wear this," she said, touching the insulin pump attached to her small body through her dress. "And I have to poke my finger to check my blood, and I can't eat lots of candy anymore. The doctor says I'll have to do this forever and forever." Several people in the audience were openly weeping now. "But that's okay," Emma continued, "because I'm alive. Rex made sure I stayed alive." She looked directly at each council member in turn with those huge, serious eyes. "If you take Rex away, who's going to help the next little kid who's sick? Who's going to smell the bad thing inside them?" The innocence of the question, the pure logic of a child who saw the world without political complications or budget constraints, struck every person in that room with the force of truth. "Rex isn't just Officer's friend," Emma said, her voice growing stronger. "He's everybody's friend. He protects everybody, and friends don't give up on friends just because of money." She turned to look at Rex, and her face lit up with the uncomplicated love only a child can show. "Right, Rex." As if he understood, and perhaps he did, Rex let out a single, gentle woof that made Emma giggle. Mayor Henderson had to clear his throat twice before he could speak. "Thank you, Emma. That was very brave." He looked at his fellow council members. "I think we've heard everything we need to hear. Let's vote." Emma climbed down from the platform with help, and the councilwoman walked her back to Sophia, holding her hand the entire way. As Emma passed Officer, she stopped and threw her arms around Rex's neck. The dog remained perfectly still, letting the little girl hug him, his tail wagging slowly. "Thank you for saving me," Emma whispered into his fur. Officer had to look away, blinking rapidly. Mayor Henderson cleared his throat. "All in favor of Councilwoman's motion to withdraw Proposal 47B and maintain funding for the K-9 unit." One by one, hands rose. Councilwoman voted first, her hand steady and sure. Councilman Robert voted second. Councilwoman Lisa third. Within seconds, all 7 hands were raised. "The motion passes unanimously," Henderson announced, and this time when the chamber erupted in celebration, he didn't try to stop it. Sophia collapsed into her seat, Emma back in her arms, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. Around them, strangers hugged and cheered. Officer bent down and wrapped his arms around Rex's neck, pressing his face into the dog's fur for a long moment. "We did it, buddy," he whispered. "You get to keep working, you get to keep saving lives." The celebration continued for several minutes before Henderson could restore enough order to adjourn the hearing. As people began filing out of the chamber, many stopped to thank Officer, to pet Rex, who accepted the attention with professional patience, or to take photos with Emma. Councilwoman approached Sophia quietly, away from the cameras. "Mrs., I want you to know, I'm going to personally chair the committee that develops the new funding model. We'll work with local businesses, set up donation programs, and create partnerships that ensure this unit never faces cuts again. Sophia took her hand. Thank you for listening, for changing your mind. Shook her head. Thank your daughter. She reminded all of us why we took these jobs in the first place. Not to balance budgets, though that's important, but to protect people, to serve the community, to make decisions that align with our values, not just our spreadsheets. She looked down at Emma. She's quite remarkable. She is, Sophia agreed, stroking her daughter's hair. Rex made sure I'd get to see just how remarkable. As the chamber finally emptied, Jessica Martinez from Channel 7 appeared with her cameraman. Mrs. Officer, can I get a statement? They gathered together, Sophia holding Emma, with Rex at his side. Jessica positioned them in front of the now empty council chamber, the American flag and Colorado state flag visible in the background. Today, the Denver City Council chose compassion over convenience, Jessica said into the camera. They chose to invest in heroes who can't speak for themselves but who serve this community every single day. And they were persuaded by the smallest voice in the room, a 3-year-old girl who asked a simple question: who will help the next child who's sick? She turned to Emma. What do you want to say to other kids watching this, Emma? Emma thought for a moment, then smiled. If you don't feel good, tell someone. And if you see a police dog, remember, they're heroes. They help people, just like Rex helped me. And what about Rex? Jessica asked. What do you want to say to him? Emma looked up at the German shepherd who had saved her life, who had detected the invisible threat that was killing her, who had refused to ignore what every human had missed. She reached out and placed her small hand on his head. I love you, Rex. You're the best dog in the whole world, and now you get to stay and help lots more people. She leaned in close, whispering but still captured by the sensitive microphone. You're not just my hero, you're everybody's hero. Rex's tail wagged, and he gently licked Emma's hand. The segment would air that evening and be shared millions of times across social media. But in that moment, in the quiet council chamber with afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, it was just a little girl, a police dog, and a grateful community learning that sometimes the right choice isn't the easy choice. It's just the choice that lets you sleep at night knowing you did what was right. Officer looked at Sophia. Thank you for fighting for us. Sophia smiled through her tears. No, thank you for trusting Rex, for believing him when he said my daughter needed help. That's what partners do, said simply. We trust each other. As they walked out of the council building together, they emerged into sunshine and the cheers of the hundreds of people who had gathered outside. Signs waved, cameras flashed, and strangers applauded for the K-9 unit that had been saved and the little girl who had helped save it. Emma waved at the crowd like a tiny princess, and Rex walked beside her like the guardian he'd proven himself to be. The battle was over. The K-9 unit was safe. And in Denver that day, everyone learned that heroes come in all sizes, some with badges, some with fur, and some in light-up sneakers with butterflies on their dresses. 3 weeks after the city council hearing, Officer stood in front of 20 elementary school students at Riverside Elementary School, Rex sitting calmly beside him. It was a crisp November morning, and autumn leaves swirled across the playground visible through the classroom windows. This was their 3rd school visit this week, part of a new program that had emerged from the council's decision to save the K-9 unit. Who can tell me what Rex does as a police dog? Asked the 2nd graders. A dozen hands shot into the air. A boy in the front row called out, he saves people, like he saved Emma. Smiled. Emma's story had spread through Denver's schools like wildfire. Every child seemed to know about the little girl and the police dog who had detected her diabetes. That's right. But Rex does a lot of other things too. He helps find people who are lost. He helps locate evidence. And now he's learning something brand new. Rex, on cue, performed a demonstration. had worked with a certified diabetic alert dog trainer over the past 3 weeks, formalizing the instinctive alert that Rex had performed on Emma. Now, when presented a scent sample collected from a diabetic person in ketosis, Rex immediately sat and pawed, just as he'd done in the courthouse lobby. The children gasped and applauded. Rex can smell when someone's blood sugar is too high or too low, explained. Dogs have noses that are 10,000 to 100,000 times more sensitive than ours. They can detect tiny chemical changes we can't smell at all. A little girl with pigtails raised her hand. My mommy has diabetes. Could Rex help her? There are special dogs trained just for that, answered. They're called diabetic alert dogs, and they live with people who have diabetes to help keep them safe. Rex is a police dog, so his job is different. He helps lots of people, not just one person. After the presentation, the school nurse, Williams, approached. "Officer, could I speak with you for a moment?" Her face was serious, and she clutched a folder against her chest. They stepped into the hallway. "I've been a school nurse for 18 years, began, and I've seen maybe 3 cases of undiagnosed type 1 diabetes in students. Since Emma's story went public 3 weeks ago, I've had 7 parents bring their children in for testing based on the symptoms they saw described in the news coverage." His eyes widened. 7 in 3 weeks. 7 in this school alone. And I've been talking to other school nurses across the district. They're seeing the same thing. Increased awareness, more early diagnoses, kids getting treatment before they end up in the ICU. Eyes were bright with emotion. "Do you understand what that means? Emma's story isn't just about her. It's saving other children across the entire city." Felt something tighten in his chest. How many have actually been diagnosed? 3 confirmed type 1 diagnoses, 2 prediabetic children now being monitored, all caught early because parents recognized the signs: excessive thirst, frequent urination, fatigue, weight loss, the exact symptoms Emma had. She placed her hand on his arm. "That little girl and your dog started a medical awareness campaign that public health officials have been trying to launch for years. You saved more than just Emma that day." Meanwhile, across town at Denver General Hospital, Dr. Sarah Mitchell sat in a conference room with representatives from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. On the screen behind her, a PowerPoint presentation showed graphs and statistics. A 340% increase in early childhood diabetes screenings in the Denver metro area over the past month. A 28% increase in type 1 diabetes diagnoses caught in early stages before developed, and dozens of media articles about Emma and Rex. "This is unprecedented," said Dr. Harold, the state's chief medical officer. "We've never seen this kind of public health response from a single news story. Parents are actively seeking information, teachers are being trained to recognize symptoms, and pediatricians are reporting increased requests for diabetes screening." Dr. Mitchell advanced to the next slide, showing a map of Colorado with colored dots representing early diagnoses attributed to the Emma alert, a name the media had coined for the awareness phenomenon. "It's spreading beyond Denver. We're seeing increased screening requests in Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, Boulder, and Grand Junction." Emma's story resonated with parents statewide. "What about the K9 medical detection program?" asked Jennifer Martinez, Director of Emergency Services. "Is there potential for expansion?" "That's why we're here," Dr. Mitchell replied. "The Denver Police Department has expressed interest in formally training their K9 units in medical detection, not just diabetes, but also seizures, allergic reactions, and other conditions dogs can detect. We're exploring a pilot program that would make Colorado the first state to integrate medical detection into standard police K9 training." Back at Riverside Elementary, the school day was ending and was packing up his demonstration materials when a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Out stepped Councilwoman, followed by a man in a business suit carrying a briefcase. "Officer called, approaching with purpose. I'm glad I caught you. This is from Technologies. His company wants to discuss something with you. Extended his hand. Officer, my daughter is in Mrs. fourth grade class here. She's been asking about Rex nonstop since your presentation last week. More importantly, my company specializes in medical technology, and we've been following the Emma story closely. Shook his hand, curious. How can I help you, mister? It's how we can help you, and the city, replied. My board of directors voted yesterday to establish a $500,000 endowment for the Denver K-9 unit. The funds will be specifically designated for medical detection, training, equipment, and program expansion. We want to ensure that what happened with Emma can happen more often, that these remarkable dogs can be formally trained to detect medical emergencies before they become life-threatening. Was speechless. $500,000. It's an investment in public health and safety, said. Emma's story showed us that K-9 officers provide value far beyond traditional police work. We want to help develop that potential. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. We're also partnering with Colorado State University's veterinary program to research and develop standardized training protocols for police K-9 medical detection. Denver would be the pilot city. Smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, so different from the stern fiscal hawk she'd been just weeks ago. And Technologies isn't alone. 4 other major Denver corporations have pledged funding. Between private donations, the corporate partnerships, and the ongoing GoFundMe campaign, which is now over $125,000, the K-9 unit's funding is secure for at least 5 years. Plus, we're working on legislation to create a dedicated K-9 unit line item in the city budget starting next fiscal year. Looked down at Rex, who sat patiently as always, probably wondering why they weren't heading home yet. Did you hear that, buddy? You started a movement. That evening, Sophia sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open, responding to the 100th email of the day. Since the city council hearing, she'd been contacted by parent groups, diabetes advocacy organizations, and news outlets from across the country. People wanted to hear Emma's story, wanted to learn about the symptoms, wanted to know how to support K-9 programs in their own cities. What had started as a fight to save Rex had evolved into something much larger. Sophia had been invited to speak at a national Type 1 diabetes conference in Chicago next month. The American Diabetes Association had asked her to serve on an advisory board for childhood diabetes awareness. And just yesterday, a publisher had reached out about writing a children's book telling Emma's story to help educate kids about diabetes and the amazing abilities of service and working dogs. Mama, come see, Emma called from the living room. Sophia closed her laptop and joined her daughter, who was watching the evening news. On the screen was footage from Riverside Elementary, Officer and Rex demonstrating medical detection for the students. The reporter's voice narrated, "The Emma Alert phenomenon continues to impact public health across Colorado." In the 4 weeks since 3-year-old Emma's remarkable story went viral, early childhood diabetes diagnoses have increased by nearly 30% in the state. But critically, severe diabetic cases requiring ICU admission have dropped by 22%. Medical experts credit increased parental awareness resulting from Emma's story and the media coverage surrounding the Denver K-9 unit budget debate. Emma pointed at the screen. "Look, Mama, it's Rex." Sophia pulled her daughter close. "Yes, baby, Rex is helping lots of people now just like he helped you." "I helped too, right?" Emma asked, looking up with those serious eyes that seemed too wise for a 3-year-old. "At the council meeting." "You helped more than you know," Sophia whispered, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "You helped more than you'll ever know." The news segment continued, showing interviews with parents whose children had been diagnosed early, with doctors praising the public health impact, with school nurses describing increased screening rates. Emma's face appeared on screen footage from the city council hearing, her small voice saying, "Who's going to help the next little kid who's sick?" That question, asked with childish innocence, had echoed far beyond the council chambers. It had changed policies, inspired funding, increased awareness, and ultimately saved lives. A 3-year-old simple logic had accomplished what years of public health campaigns had struggled to achieve. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from Officer. Just heard about the technology's donation. None of this would have happened without you and Emma. Thank you for believing in Rex. She typed back, thank you for trusting him. You both gave me my daughter's future. Outside, the November wind scattered leaves across Denver's streets, carrying with it the promise of winter. But inside homes across the city, parents watched their children more carefully now, aware of symptoms they might have previously missed. Teachers kept information sheets about childhood diabetes in their desks. Pediatricians had diabetes screening conversations they might not have had before. And at the Denver Police Department K-9 training facility, 4 dogs, Rex, Ranger, Scout, and Atlas, learned new skills that would let them protect their community in ways no one had imagined just weeks before. One little girl's whispered plea help me had created ripples that spread farther than anyone could have predicted, touching lives, changing policies, and proving that sometimes the smallest voices create the biggest changes. Emma had asked who would help the next child. The answer, it turned out, was everyone. 1 year later, October 15th, the Denver Police Department headquarters was decorated with blue and gold balloons, streamers, and a massive banner that read K-9 Heroes Appreciation Day. The parking lot had been transformed into a community festival, with food trucks, face painting stations, and demonstration areas where children could meet the police dogs safely. But the heart of the celebration was the ceremony scheduled for 2 p.m. in the main assembly hall. Emma, now 4 years old and thriving, stood backstage in a custom-made junior police officer uniform. It was navy blue with a tiny badge that read Honorary K-9 Officer 1 pinned over her heart. Her diabetes management had become routine. She wore her insulin pump with pride, often showing other children at preschool and explaining that it helped keep her healthy. She'd become something of a celebrity at her, the little girl who'd saved the police dogs. Sophia stood beside her daughter, smoothing down the collar of Emma's uniform for the 10th time. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a folder containing the speech she'd prepared. Though after a year of public speaking at diabetes conferences, school assemblies, and fundraising events, she barely needed notes anymore. "You ready?" Sophia asked, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. Emma nodded solemnly, clutching Buddy, her stuffed German shepherd, under one arm. "Is Rex here?" "He's definitely here," Sophia assured her. "He's the guest of honor." In the assembly hall, over 500 people had gathered: city officials, police officers, community members, donors, and dozens of children whose lives had been touched by the K-9 program over the past year. News cameras lined the back wall. Councilwoman sat in the front row beside Mayor Henderson. From Technologies was there with his daughter. Dr. Sarah Mitchell represented Denver General Hospital. School nurses, teachers, parents of newly diagnosed diabetic children, and representatives from the American Diabetes Association filled the seats. And standing at attention near the stage were the 4 K-9 units: Officer with Rex, Officer with Ranger, Officer Tours with Scout, and Officer with Atlas. All 4 dogs wore ceremonial badges attached to their vests, gleaming in the auditorium lights. Chief of Police Robert's cousin, as it turned out, took the podium first. "Ladies, and thank you for joining us for this very special celebration. 1 year ago, our K-9 unit faced elimination due to budget constraints. Today, thanks to an outpouring of community support, corporate partnerships, and the advocacy of one very special little girl and her mother, our K-9 program is not only fully funded, it's expanded." He gestured to a display board showing statistics. In the past 12 months, our K-9 units have completed 89 successful searches, located 18 missing persons, assisted in 34 arrests, and most remarkably, performed 7 medical alerts that resulted in early intervention for serious health conditions. 3 of those were diabetes cases in children. 2 were seizure alerts. 1 was a severe allergic reaction, and 1 was a cardiac event in an elderly man. The audience erupted in applause. Emma's eyes went wide. "Rex helped 7 people," she whispered to her mother. "7 people are alive because of what you started," Sophia whispered back. Chief continued, "We've established the Guardian K-9 program, made possible by a $2.3 million endowment from corporate donors and private citizens. This program provides medical detection training for police K-9s across Colorado. Denver was the pilot city, and as of this month, 15 other Colorado municipalities have joined the program. We're now consulting with police departments in 12 other states." He paused, letting the magnitude sink in. What began as one dog's instinctive alert to a sick child has evolved into a national model for integrating medical detection into law enforcement K-9 operations. Lives are being saved across the country because of what happened in a courthouse lobby 1 year ago. More applause, this time longer and more thunderous. "And now," Chief said, his voice warm, "I'd like to invite our guests of honor to the stage. Sophia and Emma, an officer with K-9 Rex." The 4 of them walked onto the stage together, Sophia and Emma from one side and Rex from the other. They met in the center, and Emma immediately dropped to her knees to hug Rex. The dog, ever patient and gentle, lowered his head and allowed the little girl to throw her arms around his neck. The photographer's cameras flashed like lightning. Mayor Henderson approached with a velvet box. "Emma, it is my honor to present you with the Denver Citizen Hero Medal, the youngest recipient in the city's history. Your courage in speaking at the city council hearing, your advocacy for the K-9 program, and your ongoing work raising diabetes awareness have made our city safer and stronger." He opened the box to reveal a gold medal on a blue ribbon, but instead of placing it around Emma's neck, he handed it to her. Emma looked at the medal, then at Rex, then back at the mayor. "Can Rex have one too?" she asked in her clear, innocent voice. The mayor smiled. "Rex has his own award, but why don't you help me give it to him?" From another box, he produced a special K-9 commendation medal, a gold shield with life-saving service engraved on it, attached to a collar-style ribbon. Emma, with the mayor's help, carefully placed it around Rex's neck. The dog sat perfectly still, as if he understood the solemnity of the moment. Then Emma did something that nobody expected. She took her own medal and held it up next to Rex's, pressing them together. "We both got awards," she announced to the audience, "because we're both heroes. Right, Rex?" Rex, as if on cue, let out a gentle woof and licked Emma's cheek. The assembly hall dissolved into laughter and applause, and more than a few people wiped tears from their eyes. Officer stepped forward to accept his own commendation, the Police Medal of Merit. But everyone knew the real stars were the little girl and the dog standing beside him. When the applause finally died down, spoke into the microphone, his voice thick with emotion. "A year ago, I was preparing to say goodbye to my partner. I thought budget cuts would end Rex's career and separate us forever. I was angry, frustrated, and heartbroken." He looked down at Rex. But then this dog did what he was born to do. He protected someone who needed help, and a 3-year-old girl had the courage to speak up and remind adults that some things matter more than money. He turned to Emma. "You saved Rex's career. You saved the entire K-9 program. And in doing so, you've saved countless lives, not just the 7 people Rex and his fellow K-9s have directly helped this year, but all the children diagnosed early because their parents knew the symptoms. You changed everything, Emma, and I will spend the rest of my career trying to live up to the standard you set." Sophia was called to the microphone next. She pulled out her prepared speech, looked at it, then folded it up and put it away, just like she'd done at the city council hearing a year ago. "When Emma got sick, I missed the signs. I told myself she was just tired, just growing, just going through a phase. I was so focused on our financial struggles, on making ends meet, on surviving day to day, that I almost lost the most precious thing in my life. Her voice cracked, and she didn't try to hide it. Rex saw what I missed. He detected a threat I couldn't see. An officer trusted his partner enough to act. She looked out at the audience. This past year, I've received hundreds of emails and letters from parents across the country. Parents who recognized the symptoms in their own children because they saw Emma's story. Parents who caught diabetes, seizure disorders, heart conditions, and other serious illnesses early because they'd been educated by what happened to us. Tears streamed down her face. Every one of those emails reminds me that Emma's scary experience, our nightmare, has become someone else's miracle, and that makes everything we went through meaningful. Sophia knelt beside Emma. "Baby, is there anything you want to say?" Emma looked at the sea of faces, at the cameras, at all the important people watching her. Then she looked at Rex, and her face broke into that radiant smile that had captured hearts across the nation. "I love Rex," she said simply into the microphone. "He's my best friend, and I'm really, really happy he gets to stay and help people." She paused, thinking hard. "If your dog acts weird or if you don't feel good, tell a grown-up, because dogs are smart and they know things we don't know, and grown-ups can help fix things." It was such a simple message, delivered with such innocent wisdom, that it cut through all the ceremony and speeches and got to the heart of why everyone was there. Dogs are smart. Tell a grown-up. Help can fix things. Basic truths that had somehow saved lives. The ceremony continued with awards for the other K-9 teams, presentations from corporate sponsors, and a video montage of the K-9 unit's work over the past year. But the emotional peak had already passed, the moment when a little girl and a police dog had stood together, both wearing medals, both recognized as heroes. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the parking lot festival. Children lined up to meet the K-9s under careful supervision. Emma and Rex became the center of attention, posing for countless photos. Parents thanked Sophia with tears in their eyes. Several young children with newly diagnosed diabetes showed Emma their own insulin pumps, and she high-fived each one, creating an instant bond of understanding. As the afternoon sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Sophia found a quiet moment with Officer while Emma played with some children near the demonstration area, always within sight, always monitored carefully. "Thank you," Sophia said softly, "for everything, for trusting Rex, for fighting for the program, for changing our lives." Shook his head. "Thank you. You gave Rex a purpose beyond police work. You showed everyone that these dogs are more than law enforcement tools, they're guardians in the truest sense." He watched Rex, who was lying calmly while 3 children gently petted him under Emma's supervision. "He's happier now than I've ever seen him. It's like he knows he's doing something important." "He is doing something important," Sophia affirmed. "You both are." As the festival wound down and families began heading home, Emma ran over to her mother, her cheeks flushed with excitement, her junior officer badge slightly crooked on her uniform. "Mama, can we come back tomorrow? I want to see Rex again." Sophia laughed. "We'll see Rex lots of times, baby. Officer visits schools every week, remember. He'll come to your preschool next month." "Good," Emma said with satisfaction. She looked back at Rex, who was watching her with those same intelligent, caring eyes that had seen her distress a year ago in a courthouse lobby. "Bye, Rex. I love you." Rex's tail wagged and he let out a soft bark. A goodbye, a promise, a reminder that he'd always be watching, always be ready to help. As Sophia and Emma walked to their car, Emma clutched her medal in one hand and Buddy in the other. "Mama, when I grow up, can I be a police officer with a dog like Rex?" Sophia looked down at her daughter, this miraculous, resilient child who had faced death and come back stronger, who had changed policies and saved lives, who had reminded an entire city what really mattered. Baby, you can be anything you want to be, Sophia said, her heart full. You're already a hero. The sun set over Denver, casting long shadows across the police headquarters. Inside, the medals had been awarded, the speeches had been given, and the celebrations had concluded. But the impact of what had happened that day in October, a year ago, would continue to ripple outward, touching lives, changing policies, saving children, and proving that sometimes heroes come in the most unexpected forms. A 3-year-old girl with diabetes, a police dog with extraordinary instincts, a mother who refused to give up, an officer who trusted his partner, a city that learned to value compassion as much as budgets. Together they had changed everything, and they would keep changing things, one life at a time, for years to come. Emma and Rex, the little girl and the police dog who had become symbols of hope, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and the animals who protect them. Their story would be told in schools, in hospitals, in city councils, and in homes across the country, inspiring others to listen, to notice, to care, and to act. Because in the end, that's what heroes do. They see what others miss. They speak when others are silent. They act when others hesitate. And they remind us all that every life matters, every voice counts, and sometimes the smallest among us teach the biggest lessons. "Help me," Emma had whispered a year ago. And the entire city had answered, "We will."